What are the 5 best reasons why there is no God? What are the 5 reasons why there are no fairies? The onus is not upon an atheist to say why there is not something. The onus is on a theist.
The concept that there is an intelligent designer based upon what appears to be very clear design is the major difference between trying to prove the existence of God versus proving the existence of fairies. This is a very cheap argument that you hear by atheists. The second thing that he talks about is burden of proof, saying that it is incumbent upon the theist, the believer, to demonstrate that there is a God. That's your burden, dude, and not his to prove that there's no God. Well, in law, there's something called the shifting of the burden of proof. It means that once you've established a certain conduct or fact in a case, then the burden shifts back to the other side to prove that he's wrong about that alleged fact. I think that we believers and scientists, for that matter, have already established our burden a long time ago that there has been design to the universe. The complexity of life itself suggests more than strongly that a designer designed all of these things. They are far too complex to suggest that it happened randomly. The probability, we're talking 1 out of not just trillions and trillions, but quintillions and septillions. So this is a very, very difficult hill to surmount. So what's happening is that they tend to gloss over these inconvenient facts, the probabilities in particular. The design is clearly there. Now it's upon atheists like Richard Dawkins to prove a different explanation.
Other reasons that have been offered, for example, people claim to have a subjective experience, a personal experience of God. Well, we all know how easily people are fooled. We all know how easily people hallucinate, how easily they imagine, how easily they dream. So that's an extremely poor argument in favor.
This is an interesting argument. It's not a terrible argument, but not a thorough argument either. What he's touching upon actually undermines his argument. And what he's touching upon is the concept of something immaterial. If the only things that are real are what you can hear, touch, sense, smell, and taste, how do you taste the writing of a book, or creativity for that matter? How do you see free will? How do you hear consciousness? So he's trying to paint the entire concept of the abstract and dismiss it, but he just sidesteps the very argument that this begs, which is, how do you explain all those immaterial things?
The alleged reasons why there should be a God, such as the argument from design. Things look so beautifully designed, bananas and apples and things like that, and humans and kangaroos and so on. They look as though they've been designed because that's what Darwinian natural selection does. It makes them look as though they're designed.
Darwinism has been thoroughly debunked for a variety of reasons. The first two are consciousness and free will. You cannot explain consciousness and free will using evolution alone. It exists, but no one can show how it ever came into being, either through the theory of evolution or otherwise. I personally think that they totally defeat the Darwinist explanation. The third thing is irreducible complexity, the idea that things came about all together at the same time and that one part needs to work with the other. It's not as if you can somehow work with these pieces together over time somehow. So a good example of that would be blood vessels and the heart. Well, the heart can't exist without blood vessels pumping blood into the heart, and the blood vessels can't exist without the heart pumping blood out of the heart, right? They must work together. They must have existed and been created exactly at the same time. That kind of irreducible complexity, among many other examples, defeat evolution as a theory as well. Finally is what we call the Cambrian explosion. The Cambrian explosion refers to a series of fossils, a huge swath of fossils that all appear to have come up together all at the same time. Very different, complex, different forms of life, all at the same time from the Cambrian era. Now, if evolution were true, and the idea is that somehow evolution, you start off with a small bacteria and then eventually evolves into many different other life forms, and those in turn become other life forms and such. Think of it like an upside down Christmas tree. That would be a nice way of describing it. But the problem with the Cambrian explosion is that all these life forms happened all at the same time, and no one can explain that. The evolutionist really has a big problem there. So those are 4 examples among many, including the improbabilities of the universe actually happening on its own, life happening on its own, and so on. And yet he glosses over it as if it's an obvious fact. Darwinism simply explains it all, and we're done here. Thank you very much. It's a cheap answer, and I wish atheists would be a little bit better about explaining this, but they can't.